Hey guys, wanted to finish up with part 3 of how I almost bought the farm. At the end of part 2, the 3 males had marched 3 abreast all the way to my truck, and the quiet one in the middle, finally, I didn't see anything. I just know that he put it on the ground. That's when I first saw the pistol. It was a Smith & Wesson Model 41. Real nice pistol. So then I got up to the level that probably I should have been earlier. I admit that. And I told you stay put, and believe me, I'm not going to use the language or the volume, tone, timbre, or anything. You stay put. You two get back to the car. And see, this is what happens when you're working by yourself and you start getting into things that, I've got this gun and I've got littering and I've got 3 guys coming at me and I've got somebody still unsecured way back there, and well, now I have to focus on the one who pulled the gun out of their waistband and put it on the ground, and the other 2, of course, they've got to go back to the vehicle. I can't secure 3 men. I can't. And they were 18 to 20 years of age. You just have to get your back to the vehicle and, don't turn your back to anything. And just as you're dealing with that immediate threat, you have to keep scanning. It's not easy at all. And anybody who is in or has been in law enforcement, they're just going, amen. They get it. It's not. I could have used deadly force. I know I could. But I didn't. Just showed tremendous restraint. I guess that's what I'd call it. So I've got this fella, the quiet one. The gun's on the ground. I told him to step back and turn around, keep his hands where I could see them. And that's when I reached down and I took the gun off the ground. And mag out first, semi-auto. Mag out first. That went in my pocket. And then it was time to clear. I always go over the top of the slide. I don't do this. That's a fine motor skill. And I racked it, and 22 long rifle went out of the chamber. Flew on the ground. And well, then I was right there beside my driver's door, as you know. So I put the gun inside and shut the door. And the first thing I did is I handcuffed him. Some officers search and handcuff. I handcuffed and searched. I just had a preference for that. So I got him handcuffed. And when I went to search him, I took a can of pepper spray out of his right front jacket pocket. And everything else checked out fine. So I walked him actually around the back of my pickup, not the front. That had been into the headlights. Around the back, got him into the passenger seat and seat belted him in. There's another reason for that. It just makes it harder for him either to be taken out by friends or to undo, things himself. So I got in the truck with him and immediately read him his Miranda warnings, of course, and he waived them. So I had his identification, and I had the gun. Well, of course, I'm going to run what's called a 1016 check, see if it's stolen. So I gave make, model, caliber, serial number. Those are the primary identifiers that they need to, whether it's an NCIC or whatever else they have out there now. And I'm interrogating him, and about that quickly, I hear the dispatcher respond after I'd called in the 1016H, and she asked, "Are you 1012? That means if you have a visitor who can hear this traffic." So I I told her again I was 10-4, but I'm 10-15M, that I've got a male subject in custody. And I told her, go ahead with your traffic. Well, it was stolen. So it jumped right up to a felony that fast. Oh, before I forget, I did notice that later on when I checked out the magazine that the second round down that well was loaded backwards. So 2 shots, maybe. I mean, still not a comfort knowing that, but probably because it was dark, inexperience, and the alcohol that they've been consuming, contributed to that round being loaded backwards. And I finally, I was talking through state radio. We were on low band. They contacted Metro for Minnehaha County Communications, Metro Communications. They were high band way back then. And so they contacted Metro, and there was a deputy who was out. He knew I was there. He was out circling now, waiting for my word to come in. I said, he can come on in now. I need some backup here. I've got unsecured subjects. And it was interesting. His name was Deputy Dave, another Dave. And we became fast friends. I miss him and his wife, Kim. But he pulled up behind me, and then he walked up to my driver's window. And I had the gun, of course, it was mag out, slide lock to the rear, and I had put it up on the dash right in front of my steering wheel. So he's standing there, and I said 1016H, which means hit. 1016H, hit. Stolen. So I said 1016H, and it's like it didn't even faze him. And I said 1016H, and I couldn't believe that a professional sheriff's deputy wouldn't know what a 1016H is, any more than they wouldn't know a 1029 or 1029H, which is typically a warrant hit, and then it has to be confirmed. And I said, it's stolen. And then, and I said, we've got 3 unsecured. I said, deputy, we need to get those 3 secured. So now that was his job, okay? And he did a great job after that. He did a fine job. So now I'm interrogating this 18-year-old in my vehicle. He was in possession of a stolen firearm, a stolen pistol, and there was, back then it was concealed without a permit. So I said, well, you've got some explaining to do. I said, you don't have to talk to me if you don't want, but I said, you're going down for the possession of stolen property. I said, it's up to you. I said, I don't make deals or promises, but I'm going to tell you right now that you choose to talk to me. If you choose to lie, that's not going to work to your advantage. Do you understand that? And I said, I'm just curious, where did this come from? I mean, how did you end up with it? So he told me a cockamamie story about, well, I got it a week ago at the parking lot of the Empire Mall. I bought it from some guy I didn't know for $50. Now, what's wrong with that story? Okay, here's what's wrong with that story. And I told him, I said, really? And then I had him go through that one more time for me. He did what? I want to make sure I have this right. And I said, so how did you hear about a pistol being for sale? I said, where'd you hear that? Some guy. Oh, some guy. And he gave you the name of Alex? And who? Alex. You said his name's Alex. Okay, very good. And who arranged this meeting in the parking lot of the Empire Mall? Who arranged it? Some guy. Okay. And how did you know Alex? You must have been acquaintances? No. And he said, let me get this straight. Let me get this straight. A second. So I said, let me get this straight. You had a guy, you don't know his name, who told you about a pistol that some guy named Alex, you don't know, was willing to sell for $50. you were going to meet him in the parking lot of the Empire Mall, and you said you ended up meeting him there. So you've got a guy you don't know who told you about a guy you don't know about a pistol you know nothing about. And I said, you see the problem with that? It doesn't pass the smell test. And I said, I told you up front. I said, you're already in it for the possession. That's not going to go away. And that's it. Okay, well. So a trooper showed up because I had a pickup, with an extended cab with my gear back there. I transported a ton of prisoners who I arrested, but this was just a little too much. And let me tell you what the deal was. All four, the three guys and the girl all had outstanding arrest warrants. They were all underage, 18 to 20. It was 21 at the time, so they went for underage consumption. My guy, you better believe it, I tacked on the littering because that's what actually brought me into a full-fledged enforcement contact. And anyway, so before the trooper and the deputy left, I had given it all the evidence, right down to the bullets, the mag, the gun, over to the deputy, because I go, okay, I said I could investigate it, but I said that's something that really the sheriff's office should do, the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office. So we did the chain of custody, and got everything into his custody, and eventually he and the trooper took off for jail. So they're all gone, and I ended up doing inventory of their vehicle. I found more beer, but that was it, and waited for the tow truck to come. It was an inventory search is what it's called. And then I hadn't heard anything for a few days. It's fine. I did my supplemental report. I already had that in. And a few more days had gone by after that. And I get a phone call at the Sioux Falls regional office, where my office was. And the secretary, there's a guy who wants to talk to Dave, Game Warden Dave. So I took the call, obviously. Hi, this is Dave. How can I help you? And he says, are you the one who caught those guys up there on Ditch Road? And I said, yes, sir. He said, I'm just calling to say thank you. Okay. Another car. And I'm thinking, thank me? He said, yeah, I'm calling to thank you. That pistol they had, that 22 Smith & Wesson, Model 41, he said, that's my pistol. They had broken into my home maybe 2 weeks ago, as we know now, and they stole a bunch of guns, and we're getting those back now. See, the sheriff's office had gone to work. Their detectives had gone to work. That was their job. And he said, I just want to thank you. I have all my guns back now. He said, I got all my guns back, but of course they're being held by the sheriff's office in safe storage because they're evidence. I go, okay, so, and I asked him, I said, what was the story with the burglary? He lived over on the east side of Sioux Falls. And he said it was a daytime. My wife and I were working, and it was almost like they knew, but they got in during the daytime, and they found my guns. And he was chastising himself for not securing them better. You don't just put them in a glass gun case and call it good enough. And even if you lock it, that's no deterrent. And then I called down and talked to the detectives. I don't remember which one. And he says, I was going to give you a call, Dave. He said, yeah, you ran into some bad dudes, that night. And I go, really? I mean, I already knew that they had committed one burglary and stolen a bunch of guns. And they wanted to keep that Model 41 because it just looked cool and it was fun. That's why they had it out there. They just held on to it. And he says, yeah, we're up to 6 residential burglaries. And they're all daytime. We've been looking for these guys. We didn't know who it was, obviously, but yeah, they did 6 daytime burglaries, and the only thing they wanted were guns. And he says they got, was it like, I don't remember, it was close to 20. And then that made me realize what had happened that night. It's not what I knew, it's what they knew. I was only dealing with the matter at hand. They knew that they had committed at least a half a dozen daytime burglaries, that they had stolen a bunch of guns, and that when those red lights of mine came on and they're in possession of a stolen handgun, they must have thought to themselves, we're going to prison. They must have thought that in some way, shape, or form, because they had that connection in that Model 41 Smith & Wesson. And that's exactly what happened. I don't know how I made it through that. I luck, the divine, I don't know. But I was dealing with 3 felons who had broken into half a dozen homes, daytime burglaries on the east side of Sioux Falls, stolen right around 20 guns total. And it all started because they went out to Ditch Road that night, and my informant, Mrs. Raymond Weedy, called the number on my bag phone in my truck. I was already out working, was maybe about 6-7 miles north of there when she called. And now you know the rest of the story. So I just want to say that, people talk about, once in a while, I'm not pointing fingers, but people will talk about snitches. And I've even got a thing about snitches in Rise of the Oathbreakers Part 2. But it's not a general attack on snitches. It's the Karens and Darrens is who I go after. But some folks are like, don't ever talk to the police and don't get involved. Well, you see, that's the side that people either don't see or don't want to see, that I never would have made that. And who knows what would have happened to the guns if the owners had ever gotten them back. But they did. And it was a woman who was at least 80 years old. You believe that? 80 years old. Who made that call to the game warden, who walked right into that mess. There isn't really a day go by that I just go, they knew. They knew. I didn't. They did. And at a minimum, they knew that they were felons just by virtue of in possession of that gun. So there's always more to the story. And when I say that you never know what you're going to get into, guess what? You never know what you're going to get into in law enforcement. But out of the whole thing, the greatest reward was a call, from the owner of that Smith & Wesson Model 41 and the other guns that he had stolen. That meant the world. That meant the world to me. And that's why you get into that career. It's not to mess with people or be an asshole and jerk and, on a power trip. You're supposed to do what I did. And I know lots of officers do, but there are a lot that don't. They've either never realized it, or if they did, they didn't care what their role is. So that's the story of how I almost bought the farm. I see I've been talking for just about 20 minutes. I guess I'll have to edit some of this. But you can tell that it's still, it humbles me. Why didn't he pull the trigger? And there's something else to think about. What if it had been one of the other guys who had that gun in his waistband that night? Yeah. I screwed up. But somehow it ended up okay. But I got lucky. Wasn't the first time, probably wasn't the last time. So there you go. That's my sad story, and I'm sticking by it. All right, guys, take care, and see you in the next video.